The scream cut through the summer air like a knife, sharp, raw, and full of terror, and in that single second an entire town unknowingly stood on the edge of a story it would never forget, because on the cracked pavement outside a small roadside diner, a powerful Hells Angels biker dropped to his knees as his young son lay motionless, lips turning blue, breath gone, while people froze in fear and shock. And it was a homeless girl everyone ignored who ran toward death without hesitation. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one human act can change many lives, then take a moment right now to like this video, subscribe to the channel, share it with someone who needs hope today, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from, because this story begins where most people look away. Her name was Emily Carter, barely 17, thin as a shadow, hair tied with a frayed ribbon, clothes worn and oversized from donation bins, sleeping behind closed shops and surviving on leftovers and quiet prayers, invisible to a town that passed her daily without seeing her, yet that afternoon fate dragged her from the margins into the center of everything. She had been sitting near the diner dumpster, waiting for a kind employee to sneak her stale bread, when she heard the crash of a small body hitting the ground, followed by a roar of panic as bikers in leather jackets surrounded a child who wasn't breathing, their tough exteriors cracking under fear they didn't know how to face. The boy, Jacob, no older than 8, had been laughing moments earlier, running between motorcycles, until his heart betrayed him without warning, and the men who faced fights and prisons stood helpless, shouting for ambulances that felt painfully far away. Emily didn't think, didn't hesitate, didn't weigh her worth in the eyes of others. She just remembered the CPR training she once received at a foster home years before the system failed her, and she pushed through boots and denim, dropping to her knees on hot asphalt, placing her hands carefully on Jacob's chest as if he were something sacred. Her arms shook from hunger and exhaustion, sweat rolled down her face, but she pressed, counted, breathed, again and again, ignoring the murmurs about a dirty homeless girl touching a biker's son, ignoring the fear that if she failed, she'd be blamed, because all that mattered was the fragile life beneath her palms. Seconds stretched like hours, sirens still distant, until suddenly Jacob coughed, a weak gasp clawing its way back into the world, color creeping into his cheeks as his chest rose on its own, and the sound that followed wasn't cheering but sobbing, deep broken sobs from men who had just watched a miracle happen at the hands of someone they never would have noticed before. When the ambulance finally arrived, Jacob was alive, clinging to that life because a girl with nothing had given him everything she had left. Emily slipped away quietly as paramedics took over, retreating to the shadows where she believed she belonged, convinced the moment was over and her place in the world unchanged, but she was wrong. The Hells Angels didn't forget, especially Mark Reynolds, Jacob's father, a man known across counties for his fierce loyalty and fearsome reputation, who that night sat beside his son's hospital bed replaying the image of a trembling homeless girl breathing life into his child while the world stood still. Mark began searching the town the next morning, asking shop owners, waitresses, mechanics, anyone who might know her, and when he finally found Emily behind an abandoned library, shivering under cardboard, he didn't speak with threats or pride, only with gratitude so heavy it broke his voice. The bikers didn't offer charity out of pity, they offered respect, protection, and opportunity, something Emily had never been given before. They arranged medical checkups, clean clothes, a safe place to sleep, and when they discovered Emily dreamed of becoming a nurse, the same profession that once saved her mother before she was lost, they quietly paid for her GED classes, textbooks, and later her college applications, never asking for praise or attention. The town watched in disbelief as the feared motorcycle club became a shield around a homeless girl, warning anyone who tried to exploit or mock her, and slowly the narrative shifted, whispers replacing judgment, curiosity replacing scorn. Emily struggled at first, battling trauma, self-doubt, and the fear that kindness always came with an expiration date, yet every time she wanted to give up, she remembered Jacob's first breath and the way life had surged back into his small body, reminding her that she was capable of more than survival. Months passed, then years, and the story grew into legend, taught in schools, shared in cafes, a reminder that heroes don't always wear uniforms and angels don't always have wings. Emily eventually stood in scrubs, confident and steady, working in the same emergency department that once admitted Jacob, saving lives with the same hands that once shook from hunger, while the Hells Angels attended her graduation in leather vests, tears unashamed, because family isn't always blood, sometimes it's forged in the moment death is pushed back. As this story comes close to its end, take a second and comment below what you felt during this journey, because your words matter and they keep stories like this alive. And if this story touched your heart even a little, if it reminded you that compassion can come from the most unexpected places, please like, share, and engage with this video so more people can feel this hope, because somewhere right now there is an Emily waiting to be seen, and a Jacob waiting to breathe again, and sometimes all it takes to shock an entire town is one forgotten soul choosing to act with courage and love. Years after the day that rewrote her destiny, Emily Carter's life continued unfolding in ways she never imagined, and part 2 of this story begins on a quiet winter morning when snow covered the town that once ignored her, because now the same streets carried her name in whispers of pride, yet inside Emily still carried the weight of her past, the nights of hunger, the fear of being unwanted, and the haunting thought that kindness might vanish as suddenly as it arrived. And despite wearing clean scrubs and walking hospital hallways with purpose, she sometimes felt like the same homeless girl kneeling on asphalt, praying for a heartbeat to return. Working in the emergency department taught her that miracles came with scars, and every child she treated reminded her of Jacob Reynolds, who now ran through life healthy and loud, often visiting the hospital with his father Mark Reynolds, the once feared Hells Angels biker who had become a quiet guardian presence in the town, respected not because of fear anymore but because of the humility he learned the day he watched a homeless girl save his son. Emily's biggest challenge wasn't education or work anymore, it was learning to believe she deserved the life she was living, because trauma doesn't disappear when circumstances improve, it lingers in silence, and some nights she would sit alone in her small apartment listening to the city breathe, wondering why she survived when so many others she knew from the streets didn't. The Hells Angels never stopped watching over her from a distance, not controlling her path but protecting her freedom, and when a powerful storm caused a highway accident that flooded the emergency room with injured people, fate once again tested Emily in a way that shook her to her core, because among the victims rushed in was a young homeless girl no older than Emily had been, cold, terrified, and barely conscious. And in that moment Emily felt time fold in on itself as she saw her own reflection in that fragile body. She worked tirelessly, hands steady, voice calm, refusing to let exhaustion or emotion cloud her focus, and when the girl stabilized, something inside Emily finally healed, because she realized her survival wasn't random, it was preparation. Word spread again through the town, not about bikers this time, but about a nurse who treated everyone with the same dignity regardless of status, and donations began quietly pouring into a fund Emily didn't even know existed, created by the Hells Angels to support homeless youth medical training programs, turning pain into purpose on a scale that shocked local leaders and media alike. The town that once judged leather jackets and torn clothes now stood transformed, holding annual community drives, offering shelter support, and teaching CPR in schools using Emily's story as a living lesson that heroes are often hiding in plain sight. Mark Reynolds often stood at the back of these events, watching Emily speak with a calm strength that moved crowds to tears, knowing that the greatest thing he ever received wasn't just his son's life back, but the chance to become better himself. As years passed, Emily advanced in her career, mentoring students who doubted themselves the way she once did, reminding them through action that compassion is not weakness but the strongest force there is, and every time she placed her hands on a patient's chest in crisis, she remembered the sound of Jacob's first breath and the moment the world changed. If this story has stayed with you until now, if it stirred something deep inside you, take a moment near the end to like, share, and support this video so stories of hope continue reaching hearts that need them. And just before this story closes, leave a comment telling us what lesson you took from Emily's journey, because your voice carries this message forward. The homeless girl who once had nothing became a light for countless others, the bikers once feared became protectors of hope, and an entire town learned that sometimes the smallest, most overlooked hands are the ones strong enough to hold a life, change a future, and remind the world what humanity truly looks like.